People talk about California like it is one big unified place. But if you live here, you know that is not really true. Some regions are shrinking but getting richer. Others are growing fast and struggling to keep up. Entire rural areas are being quietly left behind. Those shifts affect everything from jobs and housing to how decisions get made statewide. This video breaks California into the three realities people actually live in, so you can see where you stand, how the rest of the state compares, and what it means going forward. If you want more stories that explain what is really happening, subscribe for future videos. People talk about California as if it is one unified place, but the way people live inside the state tells a different story. On paper, it is a single state of about 39 million residents, yet population, income, and growth are splitting into three distinct Californias. The coastal metros, especially Los Angeles and the Bay Area, concentrate wealth, high-paying jobs, and global influence. The inland belt, including the Inland Empire and much of the Central Valley, keeps growing because housing is cheaper, but wages are lower and commutes are longer. Farther north, huge rural counties face stagnation, limited services, and slower investment, making daily life feel disconnected from the coastal narrative. These regions share laws and a flag, but their economies, housing pressures, and opportunities do not match. The result is a state that functions like three neighboring states, each with its own problems, advantages, and future trajectory. Los Angeles County versus counties you have never heard of. Los Angeles County alone has roughly 9.5 to nearly 10 million residents, which is more people than many entire states. That scale shapes everything from media attention to infrastructure spending and political priorities. In Los Angeles, you can move through dense urban neighborhoods, major freeways, and job centers that feel like a national economy in miniature. Then compare that to counties many people rarely think about, like Alpine or Lassen, where the population can be only a few thousand to tens of thousands spread across vast territory. In those places, towns are smaller, distances between services are longer, and a hospital, college campus, or major employer may be far away. This creates two Californias inside one state system, one where influence comes from sheer population weight and constant growth pressure, and another where communities feel invisible despite covering enormous land. The Bay Area is richer than the rest of California combined. The Bay Area sits in a category of its own inside California's economy. In 2023, per capita income in the Bay Area was about $131,000, more than double per capita income in inland and far northern regions. Even though the Bay Area holds only about 1/5 of the state's population, it produces an outsized share of taxable income and an enormous slice of statewide economic output. That concentration of wealth changes the rules of life. Housing costs rise to levels that reshape who can stay. Local politics prioritize issues that come with high incomes and high prices. Meanwhile, inland and northern regions operate on much thinner margins, with different job markets and lower wage ceilings. Over time, the Bay Area becomes a separate California defined by global capital and extreme affordability pressures that the rest of the state cannot easily follow. Inland Empire and the Central Valley growing fast and earning less. The Inland Empire and the Central Valley represent the fastest growing parts of California because they absorb people priced out of coastal housing. New suburbs expand along highways, and population increases even when the job mix does not shift upward at the same pace. Median wages in many inland areas remain far lower than the coast, often around the low 20s per hour, while places like San Diego County and parts of the Bay Area can sit much higher. The inland economy leans heavily on logistics, warehouses, agriculture, and service work, which can provide steady employment but rarely matches coastal salaries. Many households trade shorter commutes and higher pay for bigger homes and lower rents, then spend that savings on transportation, fuel, and time. This produces a distinct inland California where growth is real, but prosperity is constrained, and where the daily experience is shaped by long drives and cost trade-offs rather than coastal opportunity. Since 2020, several coastal counties have experienced population losses, including parts of the Bay Area and sections of Greater Los Angeles. People leave for many reasons, but housing costs and daily expenses are central. Even when wages are high, the cost of rent, mortgages, childcare, and commuting can overwhelm middle-income households. At the same time, inland counties such as Riverside and San Bernardino, along with parts of the Central Valley, continue to gain residents as people search for affordability and space. This creates a reshuffling of where California's growth happens. Coastal California becomes more exclusive and slower growing, while inland California becomes larger and more strained. Schools, roads, healthcare systems, and utilities inland must scale up quickly, while coastal regions wrestle with housing shortages and political conflict over development. The population map begins to look like two different states trading residents back and forth, with the far north often left out of both growth stories. Housing costs turned one California into three. Housing is the engine that most clearly pushed California into three separate realities. Coastal metros have some of the highest housing costs in the United States, and that pricing pressure forces households into a constant calculation of space, time, and money. Many families follow a drive until you qualify pattern, moving farther inland until the numbers finally work. That move often means longer commutes, fewer nearby services, and a job market with lower average wages. Inland regions become the pressure valve for coastal housing demand, growing rapidly even when infrastructure and public services struggle to keep up. The far north experiences a different housing situation entirely, where the issue is often limited supply, aging housing stock, and weaker economic demand that discourages new building. In all three regions, housing determines opportunity, school options, commute time, and even health outcomes. The housing market does not just reflect California's divisions, it actively creates them every year. Three economies: tech coast, logistics belt, and resource hinterland. California's economy is not one machine. It is three different engines running side by side. The tech and entertainment coast dominates high-value industries, including software, finance, media, and advanced services. This coastal economy generates massive wealth and draws global talent, but it also produces extreme costs and tight competition for space. Inland, a logistics and agriculture belt stretches through the Central Valley and into the Inland Empire, built on warehouses, distribution, trucking corridors, and one of the most productive farming systems on Earth. These industries require land and labor, and they generally pay less than coastal professional sectors. Farther north, the economy often depends on timber, tourism, government jobs, prisons, and small-scale services that support dispersed communities. Each economy reacts differently to recessions, automation, and policy changes. When tech surges, inland wages may barely move. When drought hits, the Farm Belt feels it first. This is why California behaves like three economies sharing one border. The income gap between regions has doubled in 25 years. The gap between California regions has expanded from a difference that was once large but manageable into a structural divide. In the late 1990s, the difference in per capita income between regions was far smaller than it is today. By 2023, the Bay Area's per capita income stood more than $60,000 above inland and northern regions, a sign of how far apart the three Californias have drifted. This gap is not just about comfort, it changes what communities can fund and sustain. Higher incomes support stronger local tax bases, better funded services, and more resilience during downturns. Lower incomes mean tighter budgets, fewer options, and greater vulnerability to price shocks. The divide also shapes how people interpret statewide policy. Rules that feel reasonable in high-income regions can feel punishing elsewhere. Over time, income differences become identity differences. Californians stop debating one shared future and start defending three regional realities. Density maps reveal California's hidden structure faster than any political argument. Along the coast, density climbs into extreme levels, with urbanized areas forming continuous corridors of housing, jobs, and infrastructure. San Francisco reaches well over 17,000 people per square mile, and much of Greater Los Angeles becomes a vast, connected urban field. Then the map thins inland. The Central Valley holds moderate density spread across wide distances, with cities separated by farmland and logistics corridors. Farther north and into interior counties, density can drop to only a few residents per square mile, with places like Inyo or Modoc feeling closer to the open west than to coastal California. Density shapes everything. High density supports transit, specialized hospitals, and job variety. Low density means longer drives, fewer services, and weaker economic clustering. This is why California feels like three strips running parallel: an urban coast, a working inland belt, and a sparsely populated northern and interior zone that many coastal residents never experience firsthand. Poverty in California is not one story. It changes form depending on where you stand. Coastal regions can offer high wages, yet living costs are so high that many employed residents still struggle, creating large numbers of working poor who have jobs but lack security. Inland regions often show lower wages and higher official poverty rates, even as population grows quickly because housing is more affordable. In the far north, the challenge can look like stagnation, with low incomes combined with fewer opportunities, limited services, and communities that struggle to attract new investment. These are three different problems that require different solutions. A coastal affordability crisis is not solved the same way as an inland wage gap or a northern decline in services. When statewide policy treats these issues as identical, it can intensify frustration. People feel unheard because their version of California does not match the assumptions built into decisions made elsewhere. Opportunity becomes regional, and so does hardship. Demographics. One super diverse state, three very different mixes. California as a whole is one of the most diverse places in the United States, with large Hispanic, white, Asian, and Black communities that shape the state's culture and politics. But that diversity is not evenly distributed. The Bay Area has its own demographic patterns shaped by international migration, high education levels, and tech-driven job markets. Coastal Southern California combines global immigration with long-established communities and enormous urban scale. The Central Valley and Inland Empire reflect a different mix shaped by affordability, domestic migration, and work tied to agriculture and logistics. Far northern counties are often less diverse and more isolated, with smaller population bases and fewer migration inflows. These differences influence schools, languages spoken, political priorities, and local identity. They also shape how people experience the same state laws and institutions. When one region debates issues through the lens of dense multicultural metros and another debates through rural isolation or fast-growing working-class suburbs, it can feel like they are describing different states. Demographics do not just describe California, they help create its three regional cultures. Jobs follow the coast, people spill inland. High-wage professional and information jobs cluster heavily along the coast, especially in the Bay Area and parts of coastal Southern California. These regions contain the largest concentrations of corporate headquarters, tech campuses, specialized hospitals, and high-skill service sectors. But housing costs prevent many workers from living near these job centers. As a result, people spill inland, they move to the Central Valley and the Inland Empire, then commute long distances or rely on hybrid schedules that still demand frequent travel. Inland regions become residential basins that supply labor without capturing the same level of wealth. This dynamic strains highways, increases time costs, and reshapes family life around travel. It also creates political tension. Inland communities feel they carry the burden of housing demand and traffic, while coastal regions retain the highest pay and the most influence. Over time, the state functions like a coast-driven job engine, connected to an inland housing engine, with the far north often outside both networks. That is how the three Californias become locked in place through labor geography. Drought and water politics split the state even further. Water is one of the most powerful forces pushing California's regions apart. Coastal cities, inland farms, and northern watersheds depend on shared systems fed by the Sierra snowpack and large statewide water projects. Supply is limited and increasingly volatile, especially during droughts. Coastal areas emphasize conservation and urban reliability. Inland agriculture depends on irrigation to sustain one of the most productive farming regions in the world, which creates high demand and high conflict. Northern watersheds and rural communities often view themselves as the source region, watching water flow south while local needs and environmental pressures grow. These competing priorities turn water into a political and cultural dividing line. Debates over allocations, restrictions, and infrastructure are not just technical, they are regional identity battles. Each California argues from a different survival logic. Cities need stable taps, farms need predictable deliveries, and northern regions want control and protection of their landscapes. The result is a state where water policy becomes a constant negotiation between three Californias that do not share the same risks or timelines. Political maps look like three different countries. California's election maps often look like three separate political worlds. The Bay Area and many coastal districts vote overwhelmingly progressive, shaped by dense urban living, high education levels, and policy priorities linked to housing, transit, and social services. Inland regions in the Central Valley and parts of the Inland Empire lean more moderate or conservative, influenced by working-class job markets, different cultural networks, and more rural or suburban settlement patterns. In the far north, long-standing separatist sentiment, including the state of Jefferson idea, reflects frustration with distance from power centers and a belief that local needs are ignored. The same ballot measure can win by huge margins along the coast and lose badly inland or in northern counties, even though everyone lives under the same laws. These political differences are not random. They mirror the economic split, the housing divide, and the demographic patterns that separate the three Californias. Politics becomes a visible symptom of deeper structural separation, where regions vote like they are defending different versions of the state. California's future is not a single trend line. It is three trajectories unfolding at once. State forecasts suggest modest overall growth toward roughly 40 to 41 million residents by 2040, but that growth is unevenly distributed. Coastal cores face stagnation or decline as housing costs, congestion, and outmigration reshape metro populations. Inland regions continue expanding because they offer relatively cheaper housing and attract logistics growth, yet they face pressure on roads, schools, and water systems. The far north risks falling further behind as populations stagnate or shrink and services become harder to sustain across huge distances. These paths create different futures inside one state. One California becomes more exclusive and wealth concentrated. Another becomes larger, more working class, and more infrastructure stressed. A third becomes more rural, older, and politically alienated. California does not need a legal split to behave like three states. The divergence is already visible in the numbers, in the landscape, and in where investment and people are moving.